Okay, karibu eh? I want to welcome our speaker today, Gem Argwings-Kodhek. He is an agricultural economist who completed his Bachelor's of Science and Master's of Science at University of Arizona, that is in the US, in 1988. So he worked for 15 years in agricultural policy research at the Tegemeo Institute of Agricultural Policy of Egerton University, before being seconded to government, where he helped develop the agricultural chapter of the Vision 2030 and the consolidation of the agricultural legislations while he was a coordinator of the agricultural sector unit, which was driving the reforms within the Ministry of Agriculture. If you've been at the Ministry of Agriculture, you know that they have consolidated most of the pieces of legislation that was done by our friend Gem here. In 2009, he served as an acting managing director of the Bioethram Board of Kenya, before leaving government to join the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund. This is AECF. At this place, AECF, Gem is the agribusiness advisor and coordinates agribusiness investment activities of the fund. The AECF is a $244 million US fund invested in 190 agribusinesses in 23 African countries. It is run by the Kenya Bitmawick. This is an accounting firm. Gem is passionate about the potential of Africa to grow its economy through the agricultural sector and sees young people and technology as being key to this happening. So after he gives the speech, and you have asked so many questions, I have two other guests that I would introduce to you, but I want to thank you for coming late, such that next time we can start early. So makofi kwa Gem.
I hope you don't mind me sitting down. I'm told whenever you're presenting, you should stand up. I could see you all waiting for a PowerPoint. I debated with my family about using PowerPoint and decided to be different. And as I saw you all facing the board, I decided, when I saw this seat, I said, this looks like a good place to present from. The way African Wazés used to do in the old days, before PowerPoint and before microphones. You can picture your grandfather sitting with your cousins. Okay, I know you don't do it now because you're on iPhone and Twitter and whatever. But in the old days, old people used to sit like this, and people would talk about the issues. And I guess that's the kind of session we're having today. I tried to find out from the organizers a little bit about you guys, and I didn't get much. And I don't know what you're expecting. So I was told I have 45 minutes, true? Which is rather long for a presentation, and it's very boring for me to just talk to myself. So I'm going to talk with you guys. I have plenty to say, too much to say, but we'll try and condense it. But to begin with, could you tell me why you left your house this morning to come all the way here to listen to me? So at least I can try and tailor my presentation to what you thought you were coming to look for. One or two people, why did you leave the house? The breakfast is good, I know. The internet is fast. But why Dr. Bitange has been telling me these people are demanding a presentation on agribusiness. And I'm just curious, is that true? And what is it about agribusiness that you really want to know? How to raise money for a startup, how to invest in farming, how to, I don't know, what is it you guys want? Can one or two of you tell me something? Yes, please.
Morning. My name is Anthony. I would say why I'm here today is I want to know and probably get inspired on how to make agriculture cool. We all know that it's not been a cool thing over time, especially in our country here.
Good morning. Okay, I'm Nancy. Okay, I came here today because I'm passionate about entrepreneurship. I'm passionate about technology. And technology can help solve a lot of agriculture problems. A lot of stuffs have been developed using technology, but so far we have not been able to solve it, the problem facing agriculture in the country. So that means there's something we have not discovered, and that is what I'm hoping to discover by coming here. Thank you.
My name is Martin. For me, I would want to know, since you are an expert in agriculture, what is the current food policy for Kenya?
Any others? Oops, wow. Can I say what you said? Okay, I think the kind of things you're telling me are I thought some of them would come up, particularly the one of midlife crisis. Because somehow, agriculture suddenly has become cool. When I studied agriculture, when I left school and went to study agricultural economics, or agriculture as you put it, but agricultural economics, I don't know much about using a djembe and killing a bug on a plant. But when I did it, I think I was the only person in my class of about 60 people who studied agriculture. But now when I meet my classmates 25, 30 years later, all of them have a farm, and they are growing something, or they have cows, or they're doing a greenhouse, or everybody. Every person I know in Kenya, even you IT guys who don't think about it at the moment, when you reach midlife, or if you look at your parents or your aunties, even those who were never on a farm and never grew up on a farm in the rural area, everybody suddenly is into agriculture. The media is onto it with Smart Farmer and mobile platforms and all this stuff, and everybody's into farming. And I was at a farmer's field day yesterday in Isinya, where a horticulture seed company was introducing a hybrid seed. They brought like 400 farmers. And as I was going around looking at the beautiful bell peppers, you can get red, blue, green. You can get tomatoes that are no longer round, but they're square. All these things are going on, yeah? But the one thing they never asked the people, and I told them, you're not telling people whether they're going to make money or not. So a lot of people, be careful, and this is actually in my speech, a lot of people are going into agriculture, but a lot of people are losing money. And for many people, agriculture is kind of like playing golf. It's a hobby where you use your money. But you show off to your friends, this is my 150,000 shilling cow, this is my beautiful bell pepper, these are my wonderful chilies, these are the 50 bags of maize I got this year, even though last year you had a total crop failure. People don't talk enough about the difficulty of farming. Something else I learned yesterday, which I guess I'd known before, and I'm told today is about agribusiness. Too many people farm without any idea of the costs and returns involved. So they go to Amiran, or they get a loan from Equity, they put up a greenhouse. They know how much they spent, because I saved 800,000 and I bought a greenhouse. But when you ask them, how much did you spend on labor, on chemicals, how much did you sell? Did you keep track of all your receipts? Do you know how much you did at the end of the day? People actually don't know. Even serious people who you think would know better. People with CPAs and PhDs in finance and accounting go into farming and then they throw away the good sense. Farming, agriculture is a business like any other business. And you wouldn't run a shop without keeping your records and your numbers. But somehow people do agriculture because it's cool and because it's in our genetics, without keeping record of whether it's working as a business or whether it's a hobby. So I guess one of the things that you normally ask people is, are you into agriculture as a hobby? In which case we could be discussing agriculture, we could be discussing golf. It's the same thing, and the level of seriousness is the same. But golf is also serious to the typical golfer. It's not a way of making money. It's a way of entertaining yourself on a Saturday. It gives you somewhere to drive to in your nice new Subaru and go with your girlfriend or your wife. And that's the view of agriculture nowadays. Other people are into not agribusiness, but self-employment. Yeah? So they're not actually in business. They just want something to do, which more or less was what happens in the rural area, where if you have a farm but you don't plow it, I was told this somewhere, you can't sit in the front row of the church because people pass your shamba and see you've not used it. But you're not using it because you realize last year you made a loss. And you don't want to lose money again. But if you don't use your shamba, you're looked down upon in the neighborhood because you're a lazy person, when actually you're actually an intelligent person conserving your financial resources. I guess the definition of business, whether technology or agribusiness, is a company, in my mind, that will live beyond you, that will provide dividends to your children. You don't force your children to work in them, but you do hope your children will get something from it for the next, when you're gone. And it's something that can go to scale. So you may start with your 1 acre now, but it's a business that you hope is going to become, I guess, what Steve Jobs has done with Apple, or what Bill Gates has done with Microsoft. And I think there's no reason why agribusinesses cannot be the same thing. And actually, from the examples I'm going to give you, realize that there are a lot of agribusinesses which were started in the 1800s that are doing exactly that. And one of the ways they are so successful and have made so much money for the families of the founders and the shareholders is we work with them without realizing who we are giving our money to. The global multinationals hidden behind what we do every day. Have I lost you yet, or we are more or less together? That was introductory. As I said, it's a very huge topic. Some people want to know about food policy in Kenya. Some people want to know about funding technology companies. Some people want to know about midlife crisis, which we're all in, by the way. But I guess I wanted to just give an example of maybe the way a big topic can be condensed. And I want to give you the story of the Bible in one sentence. God made the earth. He saw it was good. He put us here. We messed it up. He sent his son. We killed him, but he's coming again. Is that the Bible? Do I need to add anything? Okay, so let's try and break this agribusiness topic into short form like that. And if I go too fast, please let me know. Okay. And if I bore you and I go offline, my son told me, don't bore them. Just be on point. But I want to start at the very beginning. Human beings, us animals, we're animals, And 3 million years ago, we were in the trees collecting fruits and nuts. Some of us went down into the grasslands because they were finding the fruits and nuts easier to gather. And that was the beginning of agribusiness. Stone Age times, some people discovered tools so they could catch an animal, remove the meat from the bone. They discovered fire so they could cook it. Some of them, including your ancestors, started walking upright because when you're in the savannah and the grass is long, if you're crawling on all fours, you can't see far, but if you're standing up, you can see further. And somehow the people who stood up and are tall, like Milton over there, had a better genetic chance of survival than the short ones who are still crawling, which is why all of your ancestors, you should thank them for standing up on their 2 back legs. Tuko pamoja, that one I lost you. I didn't lose you. Some people discovered, and these are the ancient civilizations of the Middle East in the middle of the desert, how to make, people used to move from place to place following animals and following where seeds would naturally grow. But some people figured out that if you take the seed, plant it in the ground, you can actually produce enough surplus that you don't have to walk around the whole year. You can stay in one place the whole year and eat the food that you've grown right there. And that's how civilization started. Mesopotamia, Egypt, I think there were some in Africa, but they're not very famous. When we started sitting in one place, we had time to sit around and philosophize and think about God and think about things like that. We domesticated animals like cats and goats and cows and dogs. Though some people argue that the animals domesticated us, because I think cats were having a conversation about human beings and wondering, these two-legged animals are so stupid. Me, I just sit here and sleep, and then they bring me food, they pet me, they look after me, they do everything for me. And the question is, who has domesticated who? I think they domesticated us. Once people put seeds into the ground, we learned how to make metal and turn metal into plows, open up larger and larger areas of countryside. I don't know whether in your schooling you learned about the shadoof. The people learned how to get water out of the River Nile and irrigate their fields. And these are some of the things that have allowed human beings to become who we are today. And if you look around the world, the Bushmen in southern Africa still remain hunters and gatherers, but very happy, I must say. The Luos, where I come from, I guess we had our sticks and we had our sorghum and our cassava, our animals and our fish, and we were happy. We were not dying of hunger. The Digos were having coconut and cassava. But then, the world is dynamic, and people were moving. The Chinese came to the east coast of Africa, the Indians, the Portuguese, the Arabs, and we mixed up. And the world became a more mixed up place than it was originally. People have always been moving. England, our colonizer, came here about 130 years ago. And nobody here is from the UK, are you? No. Colonization was not a friendly process. They didn't come here because they love us. They came here because they saw our land. Their country is very small. They needed to produce more food. They needed to grow their economy. When they went to China in the 1500s, the Chinese said, there's nothing we want from the white man. Please go away. But the white man had the gun and the cannon, and they introduced opium. I don't know, opium, what do you call it now? Those of you who may use it or know where to buy it. So the British introduced drugs into China from their base in Hong Kong, and created a big demand for this product, which is actually an agribusiness product. It's made from a plant, and it's processed, and then you sell it. You give it to the customer, and the customer is yours forever. So suddenly the Chinese had a need that the British, with their colonies in the Middle East, whatever, could provide. The question is whether they had anything that Africans wanted. And I think they have us now. Everything we do, they've been very successful in making us want the things that they are able to provide us with. I'm not saying whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but they include the Bible. You realize they brought it, which we may not have needed, but now we live by it, and I even quoted it. They went to the Red Indians in America, took their land to produce food. Many of the people from Europe, there was a famine in Ireland, potato famine, which is what made people go to America and take over America, which is giving you the iPad and the iPhone and Microsoft of today. So these processes are not, different species of animals are not very nice to each other, and different subspecies within are not very nice to each other. If two different clans in Somalia, in Mogadishu, can fight each other, just think what different people from different parts of the world can do to each other. And the way to dominate people is through what they do every day. The slave trade. Africans were taken from west coast of Africa, taken to the West Indies to grow sugar. Sugar was taken on ships to Europe. Europe sent textiles to Africa. And you can see the success of that agribusiness endeavor. All of you guys are now wearing textiles, which was never part of African culture. True? So you're all agribusiness customers. But did you ever think about agribusiness that way? The t-shirt you're wearing, the socks you're wearing, the underwear, it's either 100% or 5% cotton, depending on how much you can afford. And if there's a lot of polyester, there's also a business in polyester and oil products and all this stuff. And people are consumers of agribusiness every day without realizing how important agribusiness is. The scramble for Africa was actually about agribusiness. And the reason why they were able to come here is because the people in Africa were a little bit behind. And I hope with my talk today, I can help the African people come a little bit ahead. Okay, coming to Kenya, I know I've gone on a long journey around the world and history. The average Kenyan 20 years ago was consuming 1 bag of maize in the form of ugali. So 90 kilos per person, 30 million people, 30 million bags of maize produced. Someone said he wants to know Kenya's maize policy. Our maize policy is that we can't grow enough maize. Half of our maize every year is going to be imported from countries that have sat down, watched Kenyans ignore agriculture, including our government, having wrong policies and saying, you know what, Kenyans are going to continue to need to eat ugali, so why don't we produce it for them? So countries like Uganda, and Museveni did this very deliberately, Tanzania, as well as Malawi and other places, leave Argentina and America aside, people have looked at the consumption patterns of Kenyans and the production of patterns of Kenyans, and they've seen market opportunities and they're investing in feeding you guys, making money from Kenyans. Since I'm talking to a younger generation, I don't know how many of you had, could I ask by a show of hands, how many of you had ugali last night? Nothing to be ashamed of. 2, 10, 15. If I was sitting with your parents, okay, how many of your parents had ugali last night? If you were to guess. Even for breakfast. So something is happening in Kenya, where people used to eat a lot of sorghum and millet, then maize. Actually, maize, we didn't have maize in Kenya before 1930. But now it's all that we eat. But now this younger generation don't eat it. You guys are into wheat, rice, vegetable oil, sugar, and potatoes. Did you know that's what you do? If you think about it. So wheat, the bread, the cake, the mandazi, the chapati, the pasta, which you guys eat much more than your parents. Rice, because you guys want speed and convenience. Yeah, especially the ladies who no longer want to piga your ugali, and many. Okay. The young ladies in the room, can you make ugali? I don't believe. Some make ugali with the white stuff still inside, but you know, not as good as our mothers made it. But rice is much more convenient. You've been working the whole day, you go home in the evening, you don't have time to make any. Ugali is complicated. Oil. Kenyans are very fat. Okay, I'm talking, but mine is from genetics, not food. You consume a lot of oil. And I know those of you who have a date after this, mutakula kuku na chips. Kenyan women in particular love chips. Yeah? I think the guys don't, but you've caved into these women, and they're making us fat, and they're making your children fat, and you have to tell them, you don't have to have chips on every date. You can have pasta, or something which doesn't have oil, you know, and has fewer calories. In fact, people say for good nutrition, and actually obesity is one, it's not a problem in this room, but obesity is one of Kenya's biggest emerging public health problems, because people are too fat. The actual advice is you should not eat any carbohydrate after 6 p.m. in the evening. How many of you have carbohydrates after 6 p.m. every day? Ladies, Kenyans. You are all customers of agribusinesses which have decided this is how you're going to live. You are their customer, and we're trying to wisen you up to what's happening to you. What they'll do is they'll feed you with wheat and bread, then they'll invest in healthcare. And then when you're sick, you go and you give them back all your money. Okay. In return for all this imported food that we eat, wheat, rice, vegetable oil, sugar, if you have a soda, you're having between 7 and 11 tablespoons of sugar. Yeah? Did you know that? I hope you know that. Yeah? And most of the sugar is not Kenyan sugar. If you read in the paper last week, Mumia Sugar, our largest factory, has closed down for 45 days because they don't have enough cane. So Kenya is busy importing sugar from the rest of the world to feed the habits that somebody in business, agribusiness, has convinced Kenyans to take up. In return for all these imports, there are some positive points. Kenyans are exporting flowers, French beans, tea, coffee. And then I think part of our story should be about value addition. I sat with some farmers in Murang'a, and they were saying, older than you guys, and they were saying, yeah, last year coffee went to 200 shillings per kilo. It used to be 30 bob. But my son has absolutely no interest. Even if it was 1,000 shillings per kilo, he looks at those 20 coffee trees. Okay, how many of your fathers has coffee trees? None. You know, as an European. None of you come from central Kenya and have coffee on your shamba. One guy. Okay, so most IT guys are Luos. I'm happy. But I don't believe it. You know. The point is, a kilogram of coffee leaves that guy's farm at $1. Or tea at, maybe $1. And then you get a cup of tea in Java, in Nairobi, or in Starbucks in New York for $3 a cup, which contains, a few grams of coffee. That's really the agribusiness story, which I want to tell you about. How you take the produce of the earth and turn it into a lot of money, which is consumed by millions of people who don't even realize that they're your customer. But every day, without thinking about it, they buy your product. I encourage you to go to your supermarket shelves and look and see what is there and what you buy, what is imported and what is Kenyan. And then I ask you to just realize there's a small and growing middle class who I guess I've told you their tastes have changed. So what I have here is, for breakfast, if I look at the people in this room, including the wealthier ones, you probably had tea, agribusiness, milk, sugar, bread. Some of you had sweet potatoes. You had egg, sausage, butter, or margarine. True? All of you. Please say yes, I've lost you. Okay, I'm feeling lonely here. So you realize you all have spent some money on agribusiness today. Probably even more than you spent on IT and Safaricom, which is a good thing, I think. For lunch, you guys are going to have, a few will have ugali, more will have rice, many will have chips, some will have chapati, potatoes, beans. There'll be meat, there'll be chicken, there'll be fish, there'll be juice, there'll be soda, which is sugar. And then in the evening, those of you who have some money in your pocket or a boyfriend with money, you'll go for a night out where you'll have either vodka, which comes from potatoes, gin, which comes from sugar cane or wheat, brandy, which comes from fruit, or beer, which is made from barley, hops, sorghum, and cassava. How many of you are having agribusiness from morning until night? Okay, how many of you are having a drink tonight? None of you. These IT guys are very well behaved. The point is, agribusiness is all around us. It's becoming sexy now, but it's been here for hundreds of years, getting tons and tons of money out of your pocket in return for feeding you. Because at the end of the day, we're just animals. And all that animals do is eat and breed. Everything else we do is gravy. We're not that different from lions or caterpillars, even though we take ourselves very seriously. That's really all we do. Very few of you consume lettuce or salads, but more and more of you are going to, especially as you become health conscious and make more money. Many of you eat sukuma wiki. Many of you eat tomatoes and onions, usually in a stew. So I think the typical Kenyan lady in my generation, I don't know about yours. I have some young ladies in my house and they don't go to the kitchen much. But usually they start by cutting onions and tomatoes. Really? Every house in Kenya, onions and tomatoes. Then it's a question of what they put in it. Yeah. So think about it. 40 million Kenyans, 10 million households, each using 2 onions and 2 tomatoes twice a day for lunch and dinner. See, agribusiness is big. Okay. Is this a surprise to you, or you knew all this already? You knew? You never thought about it. Okay. So I'm doing well. The largest consumed fruit in the world is banana, which I hope you're eating. And then there's always spices. 40 million Kenyans are buying these things every day. 1.2 billion Africans need them, including, I think, 100 million in Nigeria who, really, Kenyans should be looking at as a market for agribusiness rather than other countries looking at us. Just the way Museveni looked at Kenya and said, Kenyans are going to be eating my ugali. And then with the change of logistics around the world, there's 9 billion people around the world. Africa is bigger than Europe, America, China, India put together. There's so much land here. This is the reason for the scramble for Africa 100 years ago. This is the continent that is going to feed the world. The opportunity is not just to feed 40 million Kenyans, but to play an important part in feeding 9 billion human beings. And I think it's probably something that the Chinese thought about 20, 30 years ago and said, There's birthday parties all over the world. And in all those birthday parties, people are going to take a cheap present. And that cheap present, why can't it be made in China? And China has really grown its economy based on things that people around the world are going to be using that put money into Chinese pockets. Beyond the food, you have the other story about agribusiness is where you eat it and where you buy it. Some people eat at home, but I know you guys eat at home much less than your parents did. You guys are more into restaurants, the street, children eat at school. Some people buy in supermarkets among the wealthier people, but a much larger market is people on roadside markets, on the side of Jogo Road, on the side of wherever, the shop, the kiosk, and all those things are providing jobs. So each of you individually knows where the food you come from, where you buy the food that you consume. A third issue is how does the food get there? And that's another part of agribusiness. The distance between the farm and the person selling you the food, there's a whole bunch of jobs being created. At the farm gate, there are brokers, there are people involved in transportation, in processing, in distribution, there's finance, there's advertising. All this is agribusiness happening every day all around us in a very, very big way. Actually, we say that agribusiness is 54% of the Kenyan economy and of the jobs. When you think about the farm, somebody has been breeding the seeds and the varieties. 80% of Kenyan farms are being planted with seeds which are not improved. Another opportunity for agribusinesses. Maybe 60% of maize is improved varieties, but if you look at the sorghum and the millet and there's so many other crops which have not been improved, a very big opportunity for smart young people looking to get a foothold into the agribusiness sector. The fertilizer business, tractors, plowing, and then because we live in the tropics and there are other species of animal out there who also came out of the trees with us, insects. When you put your nice sukuma wiki out in the farm, that insect, the white fly or whatever, sees food. And you see spoiling my crop. So you want to fight with the insects, with the bacteria, with all the things that are going for your plants, and the viruses, which are in the field, in the store. You come up with refrigeration. Then there's water, irrigation, there's managing weather. I guess my point is there's a lot of agribusiness, and I'm not very clear with you guys which particular part of it you want. But the message I do want to give you is that agribusiness is a huge thing, and there's plenty of space in it for you. Could I ask another question? How many of you did Marketing 101? Did you? None. Okay, how many of you went to university? One. Okay. Marketing 101. It's about the product, the place you put it in, the price you sell it at, and how you promote it. And I just wanted to talk about Marketing 101 in terms of making agribusiness a little bit cooler than people think about it. And one thing you realize, I'm really de-emphasizing farming. And my recommendation to you is don't be a farmer. Yeah? The farmer is the most, not miserable. If you want to be unhappy, farm. If you want to be happy, do agribusiness. And I hope I'm making this distinction to you. I'm not saying don't farm, but if you farm, don't wait for that broker to come with his bicycle to buy your tomato for 50 bob yesterday and 10 bob tomorrow, because you'll be miserable. But anyway, tomatoes in Kenya. When Italians moved to America in the 1900s or 1800s, they wanted to continue eating their pasta and their tomato sauce. California was the place in America where it could be grown. They wanted to grow on an industrial scale, so breeders went to work and came up with a tomato that can be picked by a machine, which means that the outside of the tomato has to be hard. Because if it's soft, it won't survive being picked by the machine, put in the factory, etc., etc. And even you guys, when you go to your market to buy your tomatoes, could I ask, how many of you have bought a tomato in the last week? None. Did you, when you chose it, did you look at it? What were you looking for? Okay. Shape? Rottenness? So everybody's going and looking at the tomato, and the breeder has thought 20 years ahead, what are these guys going to be looking for in the tomato? Or what is the market system going to look for in a tomato? So California guys made tomatoes that can be picked by a machine. The outer skin is as hard as your shoe. including many of the tomatoes you guys are buying today. It's not the tomato we had 30 years ago, but it's a tomato which actually, if you think about how most Kenyans get their tomato, I don't know where you went. I think Bitange went to a place called Zucchini, where they sell tomatoes for 200 a kilo. And you guys buy for 3 shillings a piece, or 10. How much is a tomato? 3 for 20 bob. Is that a lot or a little? Ni kidogo? It's cheap. Fair. Okay. What was I thinking? The tomato you bought, was it round or was it oblong? As in a bit long. Round. Like a golf ball. Hmm? It's probably a bit long. Because if it was the round one, they become more expensive. Mainly because, did you buy it from Mama Mboga or you went to Zucchini? Or Uchumi? Where do you guys buy your tomatoes? Hmm? Mama Mboga. Mama Mboga's big problem is, if you don't buy my tomato today, will I be able to sell it tomorrow or the day after? And because you're checking, looking at it and saying how ripe is it and how is it, Mama Mboga wants a tomato which can sit out there in the hot sun for 3 or 4 days. That becomes now a breeding issue. How do you give the Mama Mboga the tomato she's willing to buy because she's not sure whether you're coming today or tomorrow? And there are many. In terms of bananas, there are things which people are doing. In terms of all of these, in terms of milk, whether you want your milk with water added or blue band added or in a packet pasteurized. And you choose your level, you choose what you're willing to pay, and the market has been responding to you. Could I ask, how many of you drank milk which doesn't come in a packet? None. Packet or no packet? Oh, from Tuskys, yeah. That was a big innovation because in the old, even now, people would come from Githunguri, wherever, with a jerry can, go around the estate. This is not how you buy milk anymore. No? Okay. Anyway, we'll come to that one. We won't come back to that one. The point is, there are a lot of people working very hard to give you what you want. And they're thinking about what you want even before you realize you want it. And just in case you don't end up wanting what they want, the market system will tell you that this is what you want. So for example, do you want blue band with vitamin A in it? I know the answer is you don't know, and you don't care. But there are people working in Unilever and in the advertising companies who are getting very busy to tell you vitamin with vitamin A, or it will make your children grow bigger, it will make them play soccer better, it will make them run faster, it will make them smarter. I'm not saying whether it's true or not, but that's the marketing side of agribusiness. I was wondering how many of you, no, let me not use that one. Okay, let me just use it. The biggest trick in agribusiness is to take the same product, spend a little bit on advertising and marketing, and sell it to you for 3 to 5 times the price without you noticing the difference. But you're happy that you've given your child organic banana instead of a normal banana, or white sugar with vitamin A added, or... So the point is, even without you realizing, our business, agribusiness, is trying to tell you what you need. I think the beauty of agriculture and agribusiness is when you take smart young people who are willing and able to use technology, who can predict what consumers are wanting, who can measure what people are buying, who can see what's happening on the farm, who can see how... There's so many places at which technology intersects with agribusiness. I think it is a big opportunity for you. It's a very big topic, and the question is, where do you begin and how do you start? One thing I would suggest is if you can control the interface between agriculture and the consumer, that's a very exciting place to be, where you can make a lot of money without putting in much effort and without taking your chances with the insects and the weather and the government policies, etc. There are new ways of reaching consumers, which is you and your children and your youngers, which makes new business opportunities for young people to come up with new ways of making things reach consumers in a form that they feel they want. So 15 years ago, there was no Tuskys milk in that thing, but someone came up with that idea, and people are doing it, and people are consuming it. My last half page. Are you missing PowerPoint? No? Okay. I guess this last page is about yesterday when I went to the farmers field day. One of the farmers complained that, nyinyi watu mnakuja hapa, mnatuambia namna ya kufanya nini, but you don't give us the practical ways of actually doing it. And I didn't know how much practical information you wanted. But this page is about lessons for you, so that you don't have to go the long way of learning the hard way, like other people, how to lose money in agriculture and agribusiness, but you can realize how to make money in agriculture and agribusiness. Because the opportunities, I hope I've convinced you, are huge. Number one, decide whether you think agribusiness is with you as a lifestyle, a hobby, like golf, whether it's self-employment, or whether it's really a business. For you, it might be a hobby, yeah? Which is not a bad thing. It's a good hobby, and you'll sit there and look at your things, but you may not make money. Number two, lesson to young people. I wish I was 30 years older. Is start. Don't wait until you're, okay. The typical Kenyan would work until they're 55 or 60, retire, get his pension, and then go and become a farmer. And 5 years later, he's broke. Do you know those guys? I hope he's not your dad. But anyway, if it is, Pole. So, you get this big lump sum like you've never seen. And the first thing you do is go to Nakuru, buy a big cow from Delamere Farm, buy a greenhouse from Amiran, buy a whatever. And 5 years later, all that money is gone. And thank God there was NSSF. At least you're getting your 3K per month pension, which is what you now live on after blowing $500,000 in 1 year as a farmer. Be careful. Agriculture, you can lose. People lose money quickly, but they never talk about when they lose money. They only talk about the times when they make money. So, I'm discouraging you from farming, but I'm encouraging you to get into agribusiness. You don't have to start in a very, very big way. You can start small, but one of the things I'd urge you to invest in is the research and doing your homework. Too many people, including the guys I met yesterday, they're buying new hybrid seeds of tomato. They have no clue where they're going to sell it. They have no clue what diseases are coming. And when the disease comes is when he'll start running around to know which chemical to apply. And when the crop comes out of the land, he's going to start running around trying to find where to sell it. The brokers are just waiting for him, and he's going to lose a ton of money. So do your homework, do your research, and then have a vision of where you want your agribusiness to go, including what it means for you 20 years from now, what it means for your family and your children in the future. Another lesson from, I told you, he said we run a fund with 192 businesses across Africa. One of the things I'd urge you is please don't go in alone. If it's a hobby, like golf, go in alone. If you want it to be a business, give yourself the discipline of having partners who are not your relatives. I think this applies to IT as well. Don't go in with your brother and your cousin. Go in with people who you met here. You don't know each other. You don't owe anybody anything. You don't know his mother. If he steals from you, you have no problem calling the police. If he's your brother, you can't. Your mom will say, and he knows it. Yeah? So go in at least 3 people. Make sure many of them are not your relatives. And they're people who, and then write down your agreements, especially the agreement for what happens when things go wrong. I think many of these lessons apply to IT businesses as well. Structure the business to grow. Another lesson, which I think is in IT and is also in agribusiness. How you structure the shareholding, how you register the company, how you bring in talent. And I must say, many of the businesses in our portfolio are Asian-run businesses. They've been the most successful business people in East Africa. But for many of them, they're having a problem which I've alluded to earlier. Their children are not interested in the business. So daddy used to go to this shop every day for the last 50 years until the day he died. And the kids don't want it. And even if the kids are willing to do it, the daughters-in-law don't want it. We met in this posh school, and then you want me to sit in a shop in Gara for the next, that's not the life I want. So there are a lot of businesses going through a transition. Do we close it? Do we sell it? What do we do with the business? And I think there's a lot of opportunities looking at old existing businesses which are looking for new young people to come in and take over. Money for investing in agribusiness, where do you get it from? Just like I think in IT. The first one are called friends, family, and fools. So that's how you do it. You start with yourself, you raise some money. You go to your family, you raise some money. Then you look for a guy stupid enough to give you 200K, you know, or lucky enough to be an early in investor and may make tons and tons of money. After that, bank loans, secured, unsecured, from your paycheck, usually from a paycheck or unsecured credit. You've been banking with a bank, they'll give you money to push you to the next level. Beyond that, there's a lot of development finance institutions which will take you to the next level in terms of buying machinery, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of soft venture capital and hard venture capital and patient venture capital. Just like in IT, there are like 80 fund managers in Nairobi looking for businesses to invest in East Africa. There's more money available than well-structured businesses that they can invest into. So if you structure your business the way I'm talking, you start small, you have proper governance and you're not related, you have the shareholding done right, you know how to bring in new talent every year, you don't insist that your children work there, there are people willing to invest in your business to take it to the next level. We've done it for 192, but we're at $244 million. We're planning to get to $500 million and probably do it to 400 businesses around the continent. It's a bit hectic, but if you want to ask about AECF, we can talk about that during the discussion. My final point, in terms of satisfaction, I think if someone is a software developer and you see somebody using your product on the matatu or in the supermarket and they don't know you and you just see them using it, I think it feels really good. If you're a musician and you hear someone listening to your song and he doesn't know you're the musician, you feel really good. In agribusiness, if you walk into a supermarket and you see a housewife picking your product from the shelf, and she doesn't know it's you, but she just goes, you know, like I guess Vimal Shah from Bitco, he watches Mamas or you guys buying his product. And it feels really good when you know that this sunflower from Bungoma came to my factory, I made a ton of money for it, and this mama has picked it, and she's happy, and I'm happy, and everybody's happy. That's agribusiness. Just imagine people consuming your product. And there are so many products that people are consuming. But one point I'll tell you is if you look for the 10 richest Kenyans, if you try to correlate the 10 richest, how many of the 10 richest Kenyans do you think are the 10 happiest Kenyans? How many of the 10 richest Kenyans do you think are included in the top 100 richest Kenyans? So 100 happiest. It's very difficult to have that thing of being wealthy and happy. I hope you believe me, even as you're busy chasing money and rent and food and transport. Money doesn't bring happiness. You believe. You don't believe. Come again? You can pay a psychiatrist, yeah. So I don't know whether you guys still tune ladies like this when you don't have money that, hey, do you want to be crying in a Range Rover or smiling on a bicycle? And ladies, have you changed your answer? Because the ladies will say, no, I want to be in the Range Rover, the glass is tinted, my shades are dark, no one can see the tears in my eye. I don't know. I guess the reason I mentioned the Bushmen and people in Kibera and wherever, there's a lot of happiness in our traditional life and a lot of unhappiness in the way we're living today. One thing you realize, the richest people in the world try and live the way our grandfathers lived. They want a rural place where they go with the family, they sit on the veranda and eat traditional food, which they choma. So Bill Gates does nyama choma. You know that? With his kids, that's when he's happiest. Not when he's going to New York Stock Exchange to announce the profits of Microsoft. What's his name? Warren Buffett. The biggest problem Bill Gates has is actually, how do I transfer this wealth to my children without messing them up? There's someone here who looks like Fidel Odinga a little bit. Raila Odinga has the same problem. How do you transfer wealth to your children from their schooling and everything and end up being happy? So, be at one with your God, spend time with your children and your family, have time for your community, because even though there's plenty of money to be made in agribusiness, there's a lot more to life than food and money. And I think if you go back to our ancestors who came out of the trees, I think they came out of the trees to be happy, not just to be wealthy. With those few remarks, I can stop. Did I give you something you did not expect, or are you happy? Say yes or no. Questions welcome.
It's going to take a number of questions, but can I ask you the first question? Today we import almost 20 billion worth of dried tomatoes from Spain, sun-dried. What do you think our problem is?
We are not serious. Okay. The Spanish farmer realizes that his market is very small. So he goes to his government to help him find ways to export tomatoes to Africa. Yeah? And the European government will give him a subsidy, keep him in employment when he should have quit a long time ago. Those tomatoes should be being produced in Bungoma. If you go and compare the farmer in Bungoma growing tomatoes with the farmer in Spain growing tomatoes, you'll see where we end up importing from Spain. But I guess what I'm talking about is, if we were serious, young people engaged in agribusiness, the government actually promoted agribusiness, looking at the policies of the past, but the policies of tomorrow, we should be exporting tomatoes to Spain, not importing from Spain. And I think I was in Pyrethrum board. Pyrethrum board of Kenya is the biggest producer of a natural way of killing insects in the world. And we run it so bad. You know, we don't pay salaries for the employees, we refuse to privatize. There's so many examples where Kenya just is not serious. And the reason we can get away with it is because young people are not demanding that Kenya does what it's supposed to be doing best. Agriculture is our biggest business. But none of you think about agriculture as a place to put your political energy or put your time. One other example I'd like to give to answer it is, maize farmers in the Rift Valley are complaining that maize prices have gone down to 1,500 shillings per bag. Last year the government bought at 3,000 shillings per bag. And now they've started agitating. Government, please open National Cereals and Produce Board. Give 3.7 billion shillings so a few large, wealthy maize farmers can buy maize at 3,000 bob and sell their maize at 3,000 instead of at 1,500. The reason they're able to get away with this is the Kenyan consumer, you guys. If unga ya ugali is 100 bob or 200 bob, you won't go into the streets. True? But if the matatu fare goes up by 10 bob, you want to riot. Is that true? It's not fair. When the sugar price, Kenyans pay 3 times the world price for sugar. Yeah? The Kenyans never complain about the price of food. You just grin and bear it. In other countries, and if you look at the Arab Spring was really driven by food. Governments in India go down on the basis of the price of onions. But the Kenyan government and you consumers, somehow you don't connect government policy to the things that are more expensive in your life. And the fact that the reason China can export all these things to us is feeding a Chinese worker costs 20% of what it costs to feed a Kenyan worker. So it's a government problem, it's a citizens not participating problem, and of course, people in government are making a lot of money from your willingness to pay too much for the food you eat, whether imported or local. I think you don't mind, and they know it.
I have a question. Are you in a business research? And yes, how has the journey been? Because you've talked so much about it. Are you doing it practically?
Yes, I am. I'm not giving details. Too many people talk too much about the agribusiness that they do. My big cow, my yellow bell pepper, my hot chilies, and it becomes part of the income. As you lose money in the business, you get income from showing off to people about what you're doing. Me, my happiness is to see you go to the supermarket and I'm just sitting behind you and you're consuming my product, but you don't know it. If you know it, you'll just say, it's even me, I can do the same thing. But as long as you're consuming it, cotton shirt, tomato sauce, pizza, the lady I was with yesterday evening, so you guys eat burgers. And you've seen that little round, that little green thing inside, gherkin. They put 3 of them. You've seen? Yeah? She produces those. So I think people get further by not talking about what they're doing. Just get on and do it. And just whenever, all I'm telling you guys is, as you consume something, and you see that little green thing inside the burger, just wonder, I wonder where this came from. I wonder who did it, etc. But since you've asked, I'll admit one thing. Among other things, I grow groundnuts, but I don't sell groundnuts like that. I sell groundnuts in a way that you'd be willing to pay. How much are groundnuts, the ones you buy on the road? 10. So I want to make you buy it for 25 and be happy. That's the business I'm in.
Hi, you were saying that you had 182 companies. How many of those are in Kenya, and any examples of what they do?
This is why it's good to use PowerPoint. I slipped that in my speech. Thanks for the opportunity. Of the 192 companies, 45 are in Kenya. Some of the interesting examples we have are Kenya Biologics. It's a company that kills moths that eat cabbages. And the way they do it is they collect moths which are sick. Okay, just think about it. If you wanted to give everyone in this room Ebola, you'd look for guys with Ebola, you'd put them in a food processor, so you max it when they're really, really just about to die. The Ebola is a lot in the body, or the HIV, and you mix it up, and then you just do a spray on all you guys. You know, with a small amount of nini, all of you would have Ebola. So this is what they do to white flies on cabbages. Mekele Farms in Ethiopia is another example. The traditional chicken in Ethiopia was about this big, and the women had pots which could fit a chicken for the festival. And the women are complaining now because the pots can no longer fit the new type of chicken which is being produced. AgriProtein is a company in South Africa. There's a global shortage of protein sources from fish stocks are dwindling, etc., etc. What they've come up with is a way that, okay, if you go to any slum area or rural area, one thing that human beings do all the time is go to the toilet. True? Every day, you're producing shit. And what they've done is they found a way of mass rearing larvae of maggots, flies, on human waste or abattoir waste. And then when the larvae are growing and are big and healthy and juicy, they capture those and they turn it into animal feed. Virtual City, do you know Virtual City? So we're into Virtual City for over $1 million. Dominion Farms in Kisumu, we are doing the fish farming operation which allowed the government to do fish farms all over Kenya, which has changed. Now I think Kisumu is a net importer of fish from Kiambu. I'm not happy with that, but it seems that the guys of Central are doing fish farming better than us. Real IPM. When people in the north or the west buy their vegetables or even their flowers, they don't want masses of chemicals on them. So Real IPM produces a range of chemicals which do biological control. So it's like the insects which eat our horticultural produce, they rear insects which eat those insects. And they're exporting them to like 5 different countries, including exporting all the way to Europe. And the animal they export, you know, on the tip of your finger, there'll be like 100. You can only see them under a microscope. And these are some of, I think, the innovative, interesting agribusinesses we do. Kisima Farm in Timau, they're doing potatoes with aeroponics. One of the things you don't need in agriculture nowadays is soil. In fact, for many operations, you remove the soil. And in the case of Kisima Farm, seed potatoes, they grow the potatoes in the air. And they just, every 5 minutes, they're given a spray of mist and food that makes the potatoes grow up without disease and very healthy. Am I making agriculture sound sexy yet? Not? I have a better one even. Oh, which one? Okay. You guys like chips, yeah? And we produce 800,000 tons of potatoes every year. But we don't have clean potato seed. So when a farmer buys potato seed to go and plant, he's buying disease as well and planting the disease with his potato in his farm. And then it just becomes a war between the weather, the chemicals, and the potato, which makes the potatoes more expensive. If you can have a clean potato seed, the only way to do it is not to grow the potato in soil. So what they're doing, and you grow, it's a table like this, you know, with a skirt covered with a black tandarua. And when you open the skirt of that thing, you know, potatoes grow, the plant, you see the green part up here? And then there are the roots where the potatoes, actual potato tubers are. So that's how they're growing potatoes in air and just spraying water every 5 minutes, water with nutrients in it. So you get a clean potato seed which has never touched soil. Naila? We have a company in Eldoret that produces sexed semen. Do you know what that is? Semen, you know. Sexed semen. Basically, and women should not start demanding this, but they should. Do you want a daughter or a son? If you're not a man, but if you're a dairy farmer. Even a man you can choose. Do you want a daughter or a son? Technology can now allow you to choose the sex of your children. Yeah? You look shocked. Oh, you didn't know? Singumu. Anyway, so we're not doing it for people yet, but I think privately people are. It must be expensive. But we're doing it for cows. Because if you get a bull calf, you've lost a year. So a farmer would obviously prefer to have heifer, female calves, which will be producing milk 2 years from now. Soil cares. This is an IT one, actually. Soil testing. Most Kenyans don't know what their soil consists of in terms of nutrients, etc. Soil Cares is a Dutch company who traditionally, in order to do a soil test, you have a big laboratory with chemistry and beakers and gas and fire and whatever, and many workers. They've taken that big laboratory, put it onto the back of a Land Rover, and now they're putting it into the size of a cell phone, where you go with your cell phone, you put it on the soil like this, you know. It sends data to a database in Holland, and then it comes back to the farmer with advice about what are the nutrients in the soil. And if the farmer says what crop he wants to grow, it can come up back with recommendations tailored to the soil and where you are. So between GPS, photographic capabilities of the phone, internet access on the phone, the database they have of soils around Kenya, they're able to give you a soil test back at probably 1/10 the cost of doing the old way with laboratories and bringing the sample to Kari and waiting for 3 weeks for a sample to come back. I'm assuming none of you have ever watched a program called Shamba Shape Up. Have you? Gosh, that's good. Maybe that's why you guys are here. We funded Shamba Shape Up as a new way of reaching farmers. You know, we funded the first 3 episodes, and now they're commercially sustainable. They get enough sponsors and people appearing on the show to cover the costs of doing the filming and production. We have many proposals for iShamba from Shamba Shape Up, M-Soko, and there's so many IT ideas that come to us, including ones where, you know, can I use a cell phone? If I'm a farmer in Githunguri or Bungoma, can I use the camera on my cell phone, take a picture of the disease, send it to somebody who can come back and tell me what the disease is and what I should do about it? So those are some of the IT-oriented ideas we have. So yeah, 45 companies in Kenya. I should say something else about what we do. We do between $250,000 and $1.5 million. And you have to match us. So it's not to discourage us, not to discourage you. It's just to say that, you know, there are different people working with businesses at different levels. And then when people come to us, eventually we hand them over to the big money people who can invest $1, $2, $5, $10 million.
I have a question. Maybe I should stand up. My name is Anne Katusia, and I have a question for everyone, because when I look around, I see everyone here is young, and you are all enterprising. But my question is, for you, you have given us a very good talk. For those who want to go into agribusiness, we can go into that. But my question is, how many people here, after you have worked so hard, would you like to be financially, would you like to have that financial freedom at your old age? I believe the answer is yes. But we have noticed from research, we have noted that so many people, for example, farmers, they end up living a miserable life after when they enter into their old age. So what do you normally advise them to do? Because myself, I would not like to beg at my old age. But I also have the answer. Those who, it's a question, it's an open-ended question, because I have the solution, but you can tell us what you advise them to do. Okay, from my own understanding, I believe that farmers, these are people who get money seasonally. For those people who are into business, maybe you get your income on a monthly basis, and I don't know how you spend your money, but you should at least set some money aside such that when you get into your old age, it will come in to help you at that stage, to avoid you begging and doing such sorts of things. So I can advise more on that.
Okay. Hi, my name is Philip. I'm interested in biodiesel. I have a company that I do logistics, and I'm looking for a way of cutting the cost of delivery to almost 100 shillings. So at the moment, I'm using gasoline engines, and I'm looking into going solar or going for biodiesel. So are there companies in Kenya where I can get biodiesel at a cheaper price? Or I heard guys can use a cooking fat, like mandazis. After you fry the mandazis, you can take that, pour it into the engine, and the bike just fires off. So I'm looking for ways to get cheaper fuel so that my customers can enjoy. So kindly advise.
Okay. One of the things we do is a renewable energy window. And we have several companies involved in the production of biodiesel. They have a problem in terms of government policy. It's like the government doesn't want biodiesel. And when you look at the way they charge tariffs and duties, etc., biodiesel is having a difficult time competing with petrol. I don't know whether the government is in the pocket of the oil multinationals or what, but imagine if most 10% of our diesel came from our own agricultural produce. So there are a few people. They are struggling. In some countries, the government mandates that 5 or 3% of the fuel is biodiesel. And I think that's one way in which Brazil helped their sugar industry. But somehow, biodiesel companies in Kenya are struggling. The technology is there. It's been here for 100 years. People have come and lost their money because they find that by the time you convert cottonseed oil or used cooking fat oil, the price which people are demanding for that used cooking fat oil, they can't sell it to you cheaply enough to make you change from using diesel to their product. Partly because sometimes it's not pure enough and it clogs up the filters of your diesel filter, and then you blame them, you messed my engine. But there are people, and particularly Kenya Power is trying to encourage the use of biodiesel in some of its plants. But if I was you as an investor, I would wait a bit. But I would also pressure my government that, why don't we promote biodiesel use in Kenya. All buses or whatever and all tuk-tuks in India run on biodiesel. Here, when you go to the petrol pump, you line up behind motorbikes. Imagine if motorbikes were running on biodiesel. That would be a serious agribusiness for Kenyans.
So thank you very much for your informative talk. My name is Moses, and my question borders on how, can you hear me? The whole question around regional integration and how we can dominate the region as a country in supplying them with food. Now, when I look around, we have Somalia, we have South Sudan, we have Ethiopia. These are populations of I would say, of 100 million. These are countries that we have supported in their peace missions. So the infrastructure and the way we are, well, the logic around even regional infrastructure like LabSet is very extractive in nature. If you look at it, it's harvest from the interior, take it to the port of Mombasa, and off. So when we are thinking around issues of infrastructure and integration, it takes 40 documents on average to process any regional movement. So a truck driver from Lamu will need 40 documents at any one point. So, between Kenya and Uganda, Kenya and Rwanda. So from where you sit, what do you think should be the emphasis on when you talk of infrastructure? Should we be heading north to Ethiopia to take the 90 million they have, or should we focus locally and see how best then we can fast feed our own market? But if we are to scale, in my opinion, and this is a question maybe to everyone, for the efforts we have put on peace and security issues, then we should also reap, just like the British did for us, then they reaped to this day.
Hello. Hello. I'm Jerry, and my question revolves around the way we do roast our maize. And I would like to ask whether you think there is a way we can add value to the roasted maize, either to add, to make it better, to make it taste better, and maybe get a better profits from that.
Okay. My name is My name is Kelvin. Yeah. I was asking. You talked something about the peripheral board being not straight, right? So how can we change? Can we actually create alternative organizations to some of these things? Something like ATDA, something like the peripheral board, the cotton board. Can we create alternative organizations, and how can we do that?
Hello, my name is Deborah. Since you are in the industry, if I was to go into agribusiness, what are some of the good products that you could advise us to go into? Crops, if I was to go into agribusiness, apart from onions and tomatoes, are there others that you could actually advise us to go into?
Okay. Can I end with the third one and the first one? Let me start with the easy one. Is there a better way of roasting our maize? I'm sure there is. But I think now the exciting part is figuring out how. I don't know the answer. If I knew the answer and I had the time, I would be in it. But I'm sure there is. And I think it starts from talking to your customers, these guys, and understanding what do you want, you know? Do you want it softer? Do you want it hotter? Do you want it with chili? It's just researching your customer and then going to people who do technology. Can we change this jiko? Can we use a different makaa? Can we wash our fingers as we're doing it? Can we make that chili look better? That's the exciting part about agribusiness. There's so many products. It's impossible to say, give a magic bullet that this is the answer. But when an entrepreneur finds that answer, that's an interesting business to be in. And that process of looking for that answer is, I think, the exciting part about agribusiness. So I don't have the answer for you, but I know I also like roast maize, but I'm sure there's a way we can do it better. What to grow and whatever. You know, the question is, so many people ask that question, but there's no simple answer. It depends on so many things. Who are you? What are your resources? What is your willingness to take risk? Do you want to use it in a farm you already have? Are you willing to buy a farm? If you're going to buy a farm or have a farm, one of the questions I ask my friends in particular is, how many nights will you spend there? Because many of them want to be in Nairobi from Monday to Friday, and then on Saturday morning wanaamkia wanaenda Nyeri or Bungoma, they're there for 2 days, then they come back to Nairobi. And there are certain commodities you just can't do that way. So it really depends who you are, where you are, what you want to do, and whether it's a lifestyle or a business. Whether it's for retirement or you want to make millions. Whether, yeah, it really depends. There's so many answers.
There is actually MFARM is doing data gathering. They can actually give you data on how many potatoes, how many tons of potatoes are being grown. Then from there, if you look at the demand side, you could avoid and move on to a crop that whose demand is there, but nobody has looked at or is planning to grow that. So the next presentation here, we are going to have Sukahumbu and maybe some of those apps developers on big data around agriculture. Those are the ones who can be able to respond appropriately because they have gathered the data. You can leverage on data to make a decision whether you would move on to where everybody has planted a crop or you do something which they have predicted demand. The US government usually has very good databases. In fact, they're the ones who can tell you that Kenya would consume so much these types of beans next year, and this will be the production, this will be the gap. In fact, they predict always on rice, on other things, wheat, in which most exporters leverage on that data to begin exports. Even Brazil has begun to use the big data on the agricultural side, and that's why when Kenya wants sugar, the Brazilian ships are somewhere on the high seas because they have the data already. We need to replicate that locally so that a farmer can actually go in and see nobody has grown onions, for example. Maybe I should go and do onions. But then you would have to look again, the data they are providing, whether where you are going to grow onions, the soils can allow you to do it. What is the soil nutrients, what are the pH levels and stuff like that. So probably your shamba would have to be investigated across to know which crops can use successfully grow. So next presentation, I will talk about it, then you know.
But just to say, one of the things you should not produce is, whatever the commodity, don't do the same as everybody else. Because even if it's onions or roasting maize or milk, you can do something a little bit different from everybody else. And I think that makes the big difference. But it also needs to be something that at least you have a feeling for and maybe even a passion for. The question about
Pyrethrum board.
Yeah, Pyrethrum board, institutions, and government policy. I think Dr. Bitange did not retire from government, but Game left voluntarily and said, I'm not going to work for these guys ever again, not in the foreseeable future, because, because the Kenyan citizen does not demand good agricultural policies, the policy makers are giving us bad agricultural policies from which they derive personal benefit. Yeah? So if you ask me, what does the government want in terms of Pyrethrum board? Now I'm told this thing is on Nation, so I can't talk freely.
You can talk. They would blank it.
How do I put it? You guys have not demanded good policy, so they're not giving you. The world wants Pyrethrum, The pyrethrum farmer is the most miserable farmer in this country, while we have a product that no one else in the world can produce. When I was the MD, a farmer would come, you have my 400,000, my child is sick, I just need 10,000 to pay the hospital bill. We could not pay. But when they come, oh, my child is dead, then we at least would release some 10,000 bob. Pyrethrum farmer is miserable. And successive governments have helped to make that farmer miserable. Unfortunately, I would say including the current one. How does it relate to agricultural policy and policy? When you talk about permits, or even devolution and county governments or national governments and permits, or when you talk about a speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour on a 4-lane highway, the government we have is very much still in the colonial mindset of you Africans are here for us to eat from you and put in our pocket. Then during the election, we'll come and give you kidogo, you vote for us, and we continue for the next. I think Moi said Kanu will be in power for 100 years. Now I'm being political. They've done 20 and there are 80 more years to go. And I like Uhuru and I like Ruto, but I don't like the Kenya government. What was my point? Okay, when I was in government, we had these dreams, and I think Dr. Ndemo would tell you the same thing. There are things that government can do that will change Kenya forever. And the frustration you have is you don't understand why simple things cannot be done that will make Kenya a powerhouse. We would have new institutions helping farmers to make more money. We would have the markets of East and Central Africa, Tanzania, Rwanda, Sudan, crying for Kenyan agricultural produce. But I think we're thinking too small. You know, people have come to power, or now I'm a governor, or now I'm an MCA, or now I'm a cabinet secretary. Instead of saying, and I remember visiting Malaysia, and I know he quotes Malaysia often. When you sit with a Malaysian government official and talk about agricultural policy, what are you going to do over the next 5 years? They tell you we're going to do this and this and this, and this is going to take Malaysia from here to here. You go to Malaysia, you get a factory, half the size of this room, exporting a mixture of fish and cassava to 6 countries around Malaysia. If you go to Kariobangi light industry and talk to the typical guy in agribusiness, in the morning, KRA, at 11, NSSF, then NHIF. When he's driving home, Kenya Police, Kaunjo, what, the bank, auctioneers, everybody, NEMA, everybody is on his case. It's so difficult to do agribusiness in Kenya. The potential is huge, and I think it's for young people who are actually voters to demand, you know. We do not want the government to put 3.7 billion shillings into maize strategic reserve. We want the government to put 3.7 billion into promoting young people to get into agribusiness in Kenya. And I think I don't know whether you heard when President Museveni was here about a month ago, he told our president and deputy, instead of having a youth fund and an Uwezo fund and a women fund, just make it easy to do business. Then you don't need these funds. People will get in there, do their business, and grow. Sort out the fundamentals, and everything will be fine. But when you have a fund with a board and a chairman and a secretary and a cashier and all these conditions, the government is just too big and too busy and too much in our life. Did that answer your question? East Africa is our market. Nigerians buy tea from Dubai. There's no tea grown in Dubai. It's Kenyan tea, sold in Mombasa, taken to Dubai, repacked, value added. So instead of selling a 50-kilogram chest for $100, they sell it in little sachets for $20. The value added of Kenyan agribusiness is being exported out of here, and so are the jobs. But if we were serious, we would just say, you know, Nigerians need tea. Nigerians need this. Just look, country by country, Tanzania, Uganda, South Sudan, what do they need that Kenya and Kenyans can produce? I think that's the way I would want to do agricultural policy, and I hope one day, or even tomorrow, we can have a government that will do this.
Actually, Nigerians, I've talked to them, we export our tea to Europe, and Nigerians import it from Europe at 20 times the price. Why can't we go direct to Nigeria? Why can't we take our coffee, our tea to Nigeria?
Okay, I think one of the things that happened is, and when he talked about we did consolidation of legislation, most of our agricultural legislation was set up by the colonialists to not allow Africans to do certain things. Yeah? So an African seen walking with a coconut within 10 kilometers of the ocean was assumed to have stolen it. Yeah? If a Nandi stole a Mzungu's cow, they go to your village and they can take cows back from any other Nandi. These were still the laws as of 3-5 years ago. So we took 130 pieces of legislation and updated them. Many of those legislation mean, for example, pyrethrum, you cannot open a pyrethrum factory now in Kenya. Yeah? You can marry a man, you can do many things, but if you open a pyrethrum factory, it's illegal. And those are some of the legislative agenda that still needs to be done. You cannot export coffee unless you have a license from a marketing license and an agency license and a this license and a NEMA license and a what license, unless you get those licenses from. So the agricultural sector is not yet free, which is why a lot of investors want to come here, but they're not yet ready to come, because the government is still extracting licenses and fees and laws and appointing people to parastatals, rather than trying to grow the sector. So I think aluta continua. Me, I did my part. I've moved on, and I'm hoping somebody in this room can continue the fight on agricultural policy in Kenya.
The last question, the one on domination, do we? This would be last.
Thanks. There's a case that's gone to court recently in Nakuru, where I think a group of real estate developers is taking the county government to court. And the reason they're doing that is because the government had put subdivision of land on hold and said, we need to make sure that the land sizes are viable. And so now what's going on there is the real estate developers want to be allowed to build where they want, and they're fighting this. And I think it's a symptom of what's going on in the whole country. Given that fertile land has always attracted many people, and the big cities always grow where the fertile soil is, that's just how the situation is. Some countries in the world have tried doing a green belt kind of thing where they say this land is prime and you're not allowed to develop. And is that something we should do, and is there any chance of success in such a thing?
I've been in many discussions, but we should not do it. If it's my land, let me do what I want with it. Could I just say one last thing? How many of you voted in the last election? How many of you made your vote choice based on the manifesto of ODM versus COD, the agricultural chapter? That's the problem we have.
Okay. Next time we read it. So we want to thank Gem for the presentation. So tumpigie makofi, and we want you to feel comfortable as I'm saying here while I call on our friends. I have two friends from the World Bank. We have Anne Lerner and Eric Handsome. So I want to ask Anne to come and say a few things, because we want to get into some partnerships. Yeah, you can.
Thank you so much. Is on? Can you hear me? Yeah. I'll sit up here. It's a little more relaxed. Okay, thank you. My name is Anna Lerner. I'm here with my colleague Eric Handsome, or Eric Hansen, depending on the time of the day. We work for the World Bank in Washington, D.C. Most of our time we work on technology and ICT enablers for different sectors. Myself in particular, I'm working a lot on energy, so I'm kind of an energy nerd. Eric is really good at STEM and education and ICT. So anyone's looking at some kind of venture interested in that, chat to Eric later. The reason I'm here, and first of all, I would like to thank the Dr. Bitange for inviting us, but also the presenter, because now I'm kind of considering my career track. Maybe I should do agribusiness, because the opportunities are so amazing. Yeah, midlife crisis. Oh God, I hope I'm not quite there yet, but I lived 4 years in Mozambique, and I worked on biofuels and cook stoves and all kinds of energy things. But every time I went to these agricultural research centers, for example, they have some wonderful ones outside of Lusaka in Zambia, I was like, okay, I'm going to be a farmer. This is it. Because it's so amazing to see these things grow, and you feed your family with your own food. And all right, but I'm here to talk about energy. Some quick questions for you. Has any one of you experienced electricity blackout? Please raise your hand. Okay, I just wanted to get you moving. I knew that one was coming. Good, thank you. What about solar panels? Does any one of you have a solar panel on your roof? Or the building you live in? A couple, okay. In the area, in the neighborhood you live, please raise your hand if you have street lights in the area where you live. A couple. Well, that's quite good. Apparently, only a quarter of Nairobi is covered by streetlights, so most of you are lucky in the area you're living in then. Have you ever thought about doing anything about that? Has that been an area where you've been thinking about, okay, I don't have any streetlights on my road. Can I set up my own streetlights? Can I do a business that encourages streetlights? Can I find a business that stops all these blackouts? I spend a lot of my time working with entrepreneurs around the world who are looking at the energy sector, a sector that traditionally was pretty much only run by the government and most likely a monopoly electricity utility, pretty much running the show. And this is the same in my country. I'm from Sweden. It's the same in the country, United States, where I'm living right now. It's an incredibly old-fashioned sector that has very strong protections for one or maybe two companies. It's not really up to date with the development of the world, I would say. So the World Bank is working with a lot of our government clients and counterparts to try to break up these monopoly structures, these sectors. In parallel, so we're very happy that a lot of governments are moving that way, but in parallel we're thinking, you know what, there's so many creative entrepreneurs and SMEs and residents who are struggling, who are really dealing with a lot of crappy energy issues. Blackouts breaking, our computers and our outlets, appliances, and not having enough energy to even do your homework in the evening because it gets dark and the light is not on. So we thought, what if we engage these groups of creative people, entrepreneurs, SMEs, to try to have them solve some of their energy problems? We're glad the government is looking into it, but we don't have to wait for that. We could actually take the matter in our own hands and start thinking about what can I do to improve my energy situation. So let me ask you two they're little trick questions. I used them when I was in kindergarten, and I was super proud. I ran home to my dad, and I was like, hey Dad, what's heaviest? 1 kilo of oranges or 1 kilo of feathers? Yeah, you see. My dad's a mathematics teacher, so he was like, that's a stupid question, why are you asking that? And I was hoping he would fall for it. So I'll try to trick you, hoping that you will not fall for it. So what is biggest? 1 kilowatt hour of saved electricity from using a smarter device or something like that, or 1 kilowatt of new generated electricity? Which one is biggest? The same, yes, they're the same. 1 kilowatt hour of saved energy or 1 kilowatt hour of new generated electricity is the same. So all these powerful projects that the Kenyan government is putting in place, the geothermal, etc., they're going to generate lots of kilowatt hours in the future, we hope. But we could also start generating our own kilowatt hours just by saving electricity, by doing things more efficiently. So the other question is, this is actually not a trick question. It goes back a little bit to what the previous professor spoke of when it comes to the cost of producing things. If my product uses 2 units of energy to be produced, and your product uses 4 units of energy to be produced, which one will be most expensive? The one that uses the one that uses twice as much input to get the same product will be more expensive to produce. And that goes back to the energy issue. So what am I trying to say here? Well, one thing is, we all need energy, reliable, steady, affordable energy to go about our lives, to run businesses, for a country to prosper. But secondly, it's not only about having access to the electricity, we also need to use it efficiently. If we're losing tons of electricity along the way before it gets to my house, and I have to pay for that when I produce, then my product will be more expensive than other people who are producing in an environment where the electricity is being much more efficiently used. So, in the last couple of years, we've seen some very exciting development around the world, where entrepreneurs have taken energy efficiency businesses or renewable energy businesses to markets. They've developed technologies in some cases. In other cases, they've just been really creative and came up with a smart business plan. So for example, energy efficiency audits are mandatory here in Kenya if you have a large house or an industry, but they're very expensive to do. There are other countries that have really smart ways of financing energy efficiency audits. We could take those ideas, bring them here, and create a business out of that. So there are lots of really interesting areas in the energy sector that I would say are very ripe for businesses, for entrepreneurs. So the World Bank has partnered with MIT in Boston and a couple of other partners around the world, and we're going to launch something we call a Negawatt Challenge. So we're going to challenge entrepreneurs in 4 cities around the world to come up with ideas. Either it's a business model, or it could be a hardware, a little sensor that does something magical, or a software, an app that helps people understand better their energy consumption. Any of those could fit into this competition. And we're hoping by running this competition, we will be able to demonstrate for the policymakers and the municipality and the government and the electricity utility that actually there are lots of people in your city already who are very creative and have good solutions for the problems that they are trying to solve. So essentially, I'm here just very briefly. I wanted to let you know about this. We will be running the Negawatt Challenge in Nairobi after Christmas. So when I've heard that everyone disappears early December. So once we're all back, ready for a new year, we will launch the Negawatt Challenge, and we will hope that you and anyone you know who think would be interested in this challenge will participate. And since it is a global challenge for cities, we will have the final winners after going through a training boot camp for the semi-finalists, and we will have a finalist, and the winner will actually be able to present their product at a World Bank seminar a couple of months after the ceremony here in Nairobi. We will share the information about it, so I was really only here to highlight the fact that this is coming up. I'm very inspired by this conversation that we had today and by seeing all of you here. Thanks so much for having us. It was a true honor to be here with you today. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Eric to greet you. It's very un-African to come all the way from Washington and not say hello.
Thank you, Dr. Ndemo. So you're probably sitting here wondering why this other guy is in the room sitting over here, and I should probably tell you a little bit about myself and where I fit into this bigger project that Anna's talking about. So when Dr. Ndemo and Anna maybe said something about me, they said something about STEM. What is STEM? STEM, are we talking about stems that grow from the ground for this agribiz thing, or are we talking about, in my case, science, technology, engineering, and math? Have you heard of that before? Okay, so believe it or not, I actually have taken the year off from teaching full-time to work for the bank. So I am a teacher by training. I am a scientist by schooling. And STEM to me, this science, technology, engineering, and math thing, is all about using those different disciplines to solve relevant challenges. I've been brought in as part of this team to try to figure out a really important question. It's a question that you are all going to help us solve. So as any scientist would do when they do really good research, they're guided by some type of question, right? We turn it around and it becomes our hypothesis. And the question that we have is whether we can use bottom-up, open innovation to solve relevant challenges in urban settings. So let me boil that down. Open innovation, that's all of the talent here that we would like to leverage. Can we do it? And can we do it in an urban setting? That's Nairobi. You've been selected. And can we solve a relevant challenge? And the challenge we've chosen, but you're going to define, is energy. So that's the question, and I came here with Anna this week to really learn. I've never been to Kenya. So I have sat through a lot of meetings. I have picked the brain of every taxi driver that took me someplace, and I've been to a Ministry of Energy to talk to them about the situation here in Kenya in terms of energy, and I've learned a lot, because I am a teacher, and I think good teachers are always learning. Dr. Ndemo agrees. I've learned that 70% of Kenyans live within the grid here, but only 30% are connected. That's one thing I learned. I also learned that only 25% of the streets in Nairobi have proper street lighting. All right? And so I sat through a lot of meetings to learn a lot of energy-related things, but I will tell you that the learning I had today, listening to a wonderful presenter about agribiz, and Dr. Ndemo here helping to guide these conversations, was perhaps some of the most important learning that I have been able to do in my whole week. I head home tomorrow, but here is what I have learned today that will help me guide and answer that question of whether or not we can use this thing called the Negawatt Challenge, that open innovation, ICT-enabled, it sounds really good, doesn't it? Open innovation, ICT-enabled solutions to relevant problems. Here's what I've learned. I have learned that even here in Kenya, there are midlife crises. I think I had mine a little too soon, but you know, I've left my job and I have a wonderful new one. I have learned that people are looking for creative, innovative solutions, like how we might do roasting maize differently. And then if I can take it all the way back out, I have learned from this young woman right here that Kenyans are ready and willing to solve their own problems. So with that, thank you for having me up here, Dr. Ndemo. Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best, and we'll be back.
Okay. For the January session, it's going to be handled by a team from the World Bank. They will be talking about this energy thing. This is going to be on the 17th of January here. And we would, before we get to the 17th, we will do our Twitter campaign and get as many Kenyans as possible to do that. For next month, yesterday I spent a lot of time with professors in Upper Kabete campus. There's a College of Agriculture, Veterinary, and some other sciences for animals. They have actually been looking at what is happening in the tech world. And I was accompanied by Suka Humbu. Suka Humbu is the proprietor of iCow. She agreed to come and speak here next. And she would open up the entire livestock sector and also the tech sector to look at it. I would hope that we'll come with some professors from the campus. They also want to come and meet and discuss some of the challenges, especially in data gathering. We still have a lot of problems with the data, and the data is what would make us succeed in the days to come. They are collecting data, especially those who are doing soil sciences. Sue has a huge database of soils in Kenya. They can actually prescribe to you what you can grow in certain places. Then I would hope I can get another data scientist to come and talk about climatic data, because when you combine climate data, environmental data, and the creativity which Eric has talked about, we can solve so many problems that we have in the agricultural sector. So on 29th, we would have Sue and a team from Upper Kabete. On 17th, in January, we would have the energy sector from the World Bank. So any question? And if there is no question, I want to thank you all. Do you prefer that we say we start at 9 so that you come at 10, or we say 10, we start at 11? Yeah? Any comment about that? 10 for 11, or 9 for 10, or 8 for 9? 10 for 10. Yeah? I want to wish you all the best until 29th. Again, we thank our friend Gem here. A lot of things that I've learned from him today. I hope I would extract a number of them as we go. I want to see, can those businesses get competitors, the ones you said? Okay. They have started the race. We can actually replicate. Thank you. Have a nice time. Oh, we want to thank our sponsors. You want to say their name? Well, are they here? Just Bank, anybody from Just Bank?